All right, we're back, and he's back. Joel Smyth joins us after a week off last week with Thanksgiving. Joel is back for a little bit of Buzz is Building. This is where we sit down with Joel every Wednesday, joins us for the last block of the show to provide 5 players with some buzz that you need to keep an eye on heading into each given week. Joel, week 14, buddy, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing? Happy to be here again. I will say, just to hype up the show for a second, I don't know if you remember the last time we were on, we talked about Jackson Dart, his designed runs. We were kind of worried with Dable. Now out of the building, he was number one in everything, 45% of his points on the design runs. Yesterday, or this weekend, he had 0 design runs. So that's why you listen. Hear stats like that.
See, that is why you listen to Joel and when we do this, because I'm telling you, man, people did not want to hear it. They did not want to hear that, like, yeah, that's where all the Jackson Dart fantasy points were coming. And there's just no way. I don't know. Joel, I'll tell you what. I thought like Mike Kafka had a chance here to establish himself as maybe an actual candidate for this job, potentially. He could actually be the head coach here. It seems like the two things he's trying to do is, one, do everything that he can do to prevent Jackson Dart, who's going to try to get himself obliterated anyways. That's going to happen as a scrambler. He's got to just make sure he doesn't do that. Make sure Mike Kafka's not a part of it. And 2, just run out the clock on the season. So I don't know. I'm definitely nervous about the Jackson Dart stuff after Monday night. I hope I'm overreacting, but I am nervous because of all those points that you brought up.
Yeah, we'll see. He's kind of Kafka's not really in the greatest spot. They're out of playoff contention, rookie quarterback that they don't want to get hurt, so not the greatest spot for him.
No, definitely not. All right, let's get into the players that we're talking about this week. Start us off with your first player where we've got some buzz building.
Yeah, we're just going with Tampa Bay passing attack in general. Like everybody asks every single week about Ibuka. When is he bouncing back? Now you add in Chris Godwin. Tez Johnson plays like 50% of the snaps with Godwin back. Now Mike Evans is coming back. So what's going to happen to everything? The main issue, I don't love what the main issue is because I feel like they could contribute all together. Like we saw week 1 to 3 with Evans and Ibuka both getting decent volume. Evans only had that 1 touchdown, so lower points per game. But obviously Ibuka, that started those first 3 games with Evans, he was awesome. But the main difference now is just Baker and the quarterback play in general hasn't been the greatest. It's been a big fall off compared to 2024 and just the start of this year. A lot of that, I think, just because of the injuries. I don't know how much is going to change, but just some stats to prove it. Ibuka, since week 7, his catchable target rate is the worst in the NFL. Dead last, 51%. It was at 86% to start the year. His catch rate on throws that aren't like screens, 5 yards or farther thrown downfield, at 34%, also last since week 7. So does the accuracy, all the off-target throws, all that sort of stuff, that's just what not helping. It's just the passing tech in general on top of these new guys coming in.
Yeah, I'm glad that you took out the screens part of it because it really is funny. Like I keep bringing this piece up because number one, we're reading again 2025. Go read the piece on the site. But I was talking about the slumps of Roma Dunze and Emeka Egbuka, and it is funny how both those guys have this abysmal catch rate. And it's like, what's going on here? And it's the reasons are actually the same for both players where the quarterback is missing them a little bit. And also they've dropped some catchable passes here too. Both of those guys as well. And it's just, again, that's how you get to a catch rate that's like in the 30% or 40% that we're talking about here. And you wouldn't think that Baker is that guy. Like Caleb, we know is not a consistently accurate quarterback, but even you highlighted it since week 7 on the season, according to fantasy points data, his catchable target rate, Emeka Egbuka, is sandwiched between guys among players that have 50 plus targets, sandwiched between Jerry Jeudy and Jordan Addison. And like we're talking about the Browns bros and JJ McCarthy and the Brosmer over there in the Minnesota. Like that's not what we want. So I posed this to Nate at the top when we talked news, Joel. I do think that getting Mike Evans back and getting somewhere closer to the offense that this was supposed to be, they've really just not had everybody healthy at any point altogether all year. Can that actually smooth things out from an operational perspective and alignment perspective to maybe make Baker a little bit better and kind of get Egbuka into some of the spots that he needs to be as opposed to just running out as the X all the time?
Yeah, and I think it'll get a little bit better, but I'm not expecting like that huge bounce back with Evans. Like, I don't know what your thoughts are on Mike Evans as a player coming back from the injury. I don't know if he'll be back this week, but it's going to happen soon. But that's my main where like you bring up the catch rate with compared to the other guys like Addison and Judy. We're not counting on them, and they're the only receivers. Or Addison has Jefferson, obviously, but Judy's all alone. We can't count on him at all.
No. Yeah, I think it might help a little bit. And again, just to get Mike Evans back in his very specific and singular role, I think that helps the passing game for sure. And the matchups are pretty good down the stretch as well. So I'm open to being optimistic about this Bucs offense down the stretch. I actually will take the counter view here and say that Mike Evans coming back actually helps this entire unit. But we'll see. Obviously, he might be back this week. He might be back next week. We don't know if he's going to be at 100%. And shoot, we were excited to get him back earlier this season, and then he was out immediately right away again. So we will see how that one plays out. Let's get to your next one here, sticking kind of on the veteran receiver theme.
Yeah, a little bit better. Trending in the opposite way, trending up, I would say, is Terry McLaurin. My first thought after that Monday Night Football game was he had 14 targets, overtime game, that sort of thing. It's like, they had 50 passing attempts. The volume isn't going to be that great week to week. But then I looked at it. Mariota hasn't had a game over 30 passing attempts. So 50 was obviously the outlier, but McLaurin was on a snap count. So his targets per route was actually 42%. So he only played 50% of the snaps. So he wasn't out there for a lot of those 50 passing attempts. But when he was out there, that volume was incredible. The 3 games with Mariota this year, 13.6 points per game, so hasn't been bad at all. And then Jaden Daniels potentially coming back. And McLaurin is not really a guy that you need a ton of volume. Like last year, when he was amazing, 6.8 targets per game. He had a ton of touchdowns, which obviously helps, but he can be useful as a 7 target per game guy. So Vikings this week, not the greatest play in the world, but that Vikings defense has gotten a lot worse. When we're comparing the first half of the year to the second half of the year, that passing defense, they've dropped off the most in the NFL in terms of their pass EPA.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, and it makes sense too. They're just in such horrible game scripts all the time too. Like you're gonna get dunked on consistently on the defensive side of it because you're out there all the time. The like time of possession's got to be crazy in favor of Minnesota's opponents as opposed to them. I mean, they just cannot sustain and maintain drives, so that probably increases that passing volume against them. And again, just to hammer the point, like McLaurin is so important to this offense, man. He's the only one who can win outside. He's the only one who can really beat man coverage. So he is definitely a guy, Joel, that I mean, I saw like all the jokes on Twitter as Terry McLaurin, was crushing it against the Denver Broncos. Like, congratulations to all the 10th place fantasy teams with Terry McLaurin, crushing it for them. Again, I will say, not to just keep talking about myself, but I picked up Terry McLaurin because he got dropped in one of my leagues, and I needed to get into needed him, and I to get into like 4th place in a league and push for a playoff positioning, and he's helpful. So like again, there are people out there who hopefully picked up McLaurin when others dropped him because I think he's going to be a pretty nice play the rest of the way.
Yeah, I would say like low end wide receiver 2, and the big thing too, you see it on the screen, fantasy championship. They play the Cowboys. Can't really ask for anything better.
No, definitely some really good spots there down the stretch for Terry McLaurin. Curious to where you're going with this next, not just player, but a group of players here potentially.
Yeah, just the Colts offense in general, getting lots of questions. What's happening with Jonathan Taylor, all that sort of stuff. A lot of it is just the unluckiness in the fantasy schedule. The first half of the season, his schedule was one of the best. Second half of the season, one of the worst. And sadly, bad news, it's kind of going to continue. He has 5 games this year against those top 8 defenses against running backs. So those top 8 defenses, he scores 13.7 points per game. Not really horrible, but it's not obviously what you want. He has that one blow-up game and then 4 games that were kind of not that great, 2 of them being the last 2 weeks. The other teams, bottom 24, or however you want to put it, the other 24 teams, 30 points per game. So he's amazing. But going forward, he's got Jacksonville, Seattle, San Fran, and then Jacksonville again. And surprisingly, Jacksonville, top 5 defense against running backs right now. Seattle's number 5 too. So Jacksonville has a little bit more hope because their defense as a whole is more close to the middle in terms of a scoring defense, and they're just in the red zone a bunch. He's going to get so many touches down there where should have lots of potential for scoring. In his career, has dominated the Jaguars for what it's worth. But Seattle, like, not the greatest matchup. I don't mind San Francisco, especially with how many injuries they've had on that defense, but not the greatest schedule going forward.
Man, I gotta shout out Boone again on this one. That like was 2 or 3 weeks ago. He kind of said like, is Jonathan Taylor sneaky the best sell high that you can make at the trade deadline? And obviously, like, you're selling as high as possible. And he mentioned some of these matchups. And when he said it, I was like, oh God, let me tell you what. Even if he is, I would never have the stones to do it. I'm too much of a coward. I would never be able to trade Jonathan Taylor. But he's been kind of right about this slowdown here. And as you pointed out, like it might continue here. And I come back to the Colts offense as a whole here. I don't think they're going to fall off the face of the earth, but if they level off from a historic pace, and they've kind of been from a points per drive perspective, they were at a historic pace. They've dipped down to like middle of the pack. Even if they level out somewhere between that, that's going to shave off the upside from all of these players here. And I do think JT is even susceptible to that as well.
Yeah, that's also number one ranker, Justin Boone, I've seen today in terms of the whole industry.
Yeah, shout
I have
out,
a question.
baby.
Yeah, shout out. I have a question for you. How worried are you in terms of the Daniel Jones injury? Because that's the other thing. Quarterback, those last 2 games, horrible schedule. Going forward, more middle of the road. But that's what scares me is he's playing with a broken leg. Like, I don't know how he's doing it, but I'm a little bit worried. I don't know how that's going to like just affect the offense as a whole, but like it scares me. It scares me.
The thing I think that's pretty tough about it is, one, if he's not able to, if he's a broken freaking leg, he's not able to really be a rushing threat. That takes away some of the venom from their RPOs, and that they're kind of using that at a good clip at the start of the season, which one is going to take away some of those easy button first down targets that Michael Pittman was just eating on to start the season. So like that's a problem. And then you get back into that kind of Gardner Minshew area where, you're using the RPOs. Nobody expects you to keep that ball. That was the case with Gardner Minshew when he was the starter a couple of years ago. And then the second thing is too, they've gotten really conservative as a play calling unit with Jones banged up. They've been a very early down rushing team as opposed to throwing the ball a bunch on first down, which I think was keeping defenses on their toes. It was funneling like layup targets to Michael Pittman, where now I think they've become a little bit, Joel, like this. I don't think they're going to be bad, but I think they're going to go into some of these matchups and be a little bit more volatile because they've got to get more heavy drop back. They've got to be kind of in these rushing scripts. And I think this will lead to some more herky-jerky volatility of some of these guys where it might be like we saw last week. Pierce has the big game, but then Pittman does nothing. The week before against Kansas City, Pierce had 1 catch. Pittman and Downs got a bunch of targets. I think that's how this is going to go on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah, those are some incredible points. I love it. Like an incredible offense, but it is like limited now. So this changes things. Is it going to be that team that was scoring basically 40 points a game the rest of the season? Don't know.
Probably not. All right, let's stick with a team that is scoring some points, but might not make it into the actual NFL playoffs here.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah, the buzz is building for the fantasy playoffs and Derek Stingley Jr. I feel like it's the Derek Stingley Jr. week, celebrating him against that Colts team last week, held Pittman to basically nothing, So this week, that's who the Chiefs have. Derek Stingley against Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And then just the playoff schedule. They get the Chargers. Tennessee's not bad. And then Denver week 17. It's not the greatest schedule for Mahomes and those receivers. So I've gotten lots of questions about Rice. I'm sure you've seen the stat of the week of him and JSN since he's returned, tied as that wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So Rice has been amazing. And I'm still not very worried for him when it comes to these tough matchups over the next 4 weeks. Lots of different reasons. One is 54% of his targets come out of the slot. So he'll be away of those top corners like a Surtain, like a Stingley, on over half of his targets anyways. Can't really be shadowed at as frequently. In terms of his other catches, how they use them, the design work, all of his short area targets, and how they use them at the goal line is all amazing and consistent. 3 designed targets per game. Nobody else has 2. He's first in targets per game under those 5 yards downfield. So those short gamey targets in general at the line of scrimmage, all that sort of stuff. And everyone talks about how incredible Davante Adams has been at the goal line. His inside the 5 targets, barely above Rashee Rice. And then no one is even close to those two. So Rashee Rice, it's a shorter sample size, 7 games, something like that. But it's basically the same usage as Davante Adams has at the goal line. It's why he's been so consistent. So it's a lot harder for him to be stopped by a matchup, but just because how they use them. Hurts Mahomes a little bit, kills Xavier Worthy, I think. He's been not that great in the matchups, are horrible. But for Rice, not too worried.
Yeah, you just sacrifice Xavier Worthy and you continue to pepper Rashee Rice out of the slot, underneath, all that stuff. I mean, about like 60% of his usage is not even real wide receiver stuff. So he's just not a normal guy in terms of some of those shadow matchups or anything like that. But so that's a really good point for anybody, because I know there are people who just look at the schedule and be like, oh my God, he's going to get this. That's a good point from you that from a coverage perspective, he's not going to end up facing Rashee Rice, a lot of these top level corners in that way. Great transition here. Your final point, top level corner, Joel. Joel, I'm really excited to hear you talk about this player, because I think fantasy football analysts might be the only people talking about this guy, because the Bengals and their defense are so terrible. So let it rip on DJ Turner here.
DJ Turner, craziest stat of the week for you. I guess you see it on the screen now. But the Cincinnati defense against receivers this year, how many receivers would you guess have 20 receiving fantasy points or more in a game? This is PPR, by the way. So point per reception, just reaching 20 points, that ceiling game this season.
I mean, I would guess
would you have a
because
guess?
It's on the screen.
Yes, I think I haven't jacked, but I'm guessing they're the only team this year that has 0 games of a wide receiver in fantasy scoring 20 points on them in receiving, at least. DJ Moore and Marvin Mims, I think, both have, but that's because of rushing touchdowns, or like DJ Moore at a passing touchdown against them.
Yeah.
Like, ridiculous. And every single week I get asked, basically, at least in the second half of the season, why did blank do horrible against the Bengals? Why did blank do horrible against the Bengals? And basically every time it's been DJ Turner. He's been a great corner for them, this rising star, young guy, shadowing those receivers, snap to snap across the field. And what we've seen, DK Metcalf, 8 points. Adunze, 0 points. Metcalf again, 9.9. And then Flowers last week, he had the touchdown. That was probably not a penalty, but 0.6 points. Even if he had that big touchdown, it'd be like 10 points. So he's been incredible. So what people think is like that dream matchup for that outside receivers, it's really not the greatest. And there's some interesting receivers going forward in the fantasy playoffs. For this week, they get the Bills. Doesn't really affect too much. But week 15, first round of the playoffs, it'll be Zay Flowers again. Week 16 is Jalen Waddle. And then that fantasy championship game, he's going to get Marvin Harrison Jr.
Really interesting schedule. Yeah, again, no one cares about the Bills, so that's fine. But from a receiver perspective, but yeah, I mean, and Jalen Waddle, I mean, he's the only game in town from a receiver perspective, so you know he's going to get him on like 80-something% of the routes here. Jalen Waddle, DJ Turner, Marvin Harrison. I'm at least interested to see, how that Michael Wilson versus Marvin Harrison kind of goes. But Trey McBride's just going to catch 15 balls against that Bengals defense, because where you take from one, you give to the other. Receivers aren't having the big games, tight ends are having the big games. So go ahead and congratulate yourself. You have Trey McBride. You won your fantasy championship with this matchup in week 17. But that's great info, Joel. I really appreciate it. You just got to get there. But if you get there, if you got Trey McBride, you're in a really good spot.